Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and I wanted to do a quick follow-up on a video I did the other night on the Weekly Wrap-Up in regards to YouTube and fair use. A lot of viewers suggested that I actually make that diatribe I did in that video a separate standalone video, so that is what I'm doing. When I'm done with this introduction, you will see the video that I shot for that piece the other night. But I did want to add one thing to it, because what you're about to hear is how a lot of independent creators like myself are at a real disadvantage on YouTube's platform insofar as our rights are concerned about fair use. And this really impacts a lot of game reviewers, because often these companies come after you for using footage of their games in your review. Even if you have a fair use to use that content, your ability to contest that is very limited because of how YouTube's terms of service work. And I go into detail on that in that video. But I wanted to just add one more piece to this, because while it's easy for people to come after us to take our content down, it's often very hard for us to go in the other direction and take down people that infringe our content. And I got a great comment the other night that reminded me of something I didn't cover in that video from Ann Elizabeth. She's another YouTube creator. I'll put a link to the video that she made down below in the video description. And what she's talking about here are a number of these spam outlets that go on YouTube and re-upload other people's content and then put affiliate links next to it in the hopes that they can earn money off of other people's hard work. This happens all the time. I am constantly going after people taking down their content for stealing my stuff and re-uploading it. Sometimes those videos get thousands of views before I hear about them, because I have to either go and search all day long for them or wait for somebody to tell me that they stumbled across my content on somebody else's channel. So I'm at a big disadvantage right off the bat with that. Sometimes I can lose a lot of money, especially if I'm giving thousands of views away to someone who is pirating my content and essentially competing against me with my own content, which is horrible. And the process by which I have to go through to take this content down is far less efficient than many of these rights holders have to come after me. So I gave an example in the video you're about to see about Konami, which is a video game manufacturer. They own the rights to Contra, an old 8-bit Nintendo game. I had used some of their footage in a review I was doing. They immediately, with an algorithm, were able to claim that content and deny me the right to monetize it. But let me show you what I have to go through to do the same thing when someone steals my stuff. So what I have to do after I found that some of my content has been re-uploaded, I have to go to this form that YouTube has put together. So remember, all these larger corporations have access to a special tool that YouTube creates to automatically find violations and allow you to have them automatically dealt with. We don't have that as independent creators here, and I've asked for that access. They never give it to me. So I have to go to this form, click on copyright infringement, say that I'm the one being infringed. I have to put in the URL of the video that was uploaded of mine on somebody else's channel. I then have to go and say that it was my video, and then find my video URL back in my back catalog. And that takes some time to go through each one of these violations. Sometimes people upload half my channel or more to their bogus channel, and it takes a long time to keep going back and forth and finding all these URLs and putting them in. And the worst part is I can only do like 5 or 10 claims on each of these forms. So I have to put in that URL from my original video, tell them whether it's the entire video or just a timestamp, and then I can add a few more to it. And then down here I've got to fill in all this personal information about myself, and then check off all these boxes under penalty of perjury, no less here, and then put my name in and submit. Now, in fairness to YouTube, they very quickly take this content down when I submit these complaints, but you can see how much time this takes for me to do versus someone who is favored on the platform like Konami or another big corporation who just can snap their fingers and have things dealt with. And my only option actually is to take content down. That may not be always what I may want to do. I might want to allow someone to keep that content up and maybe not earn revenue from it, or maybe I just want to monitor the analytics on it. There's a lot of things that I maybe would like to have the option to do that I can't through this algorithm, because I'm not part of the big players club here on YouTube. And I think this is a problem that many YouTubers deal with. And in fact, this process is so onerous that many creators just don't bother taking other people's content down, because you can spend all day doing this and not actually creating anything new. So lots of money is going into the hands of people that are really stealing from your favorite independent creators, because we lack the efficient process that all these big corporations do that are taking down your favorite YouTubers' game content. It drives me crazy. So in any event, enough of that. That's just an additional burden. You're going to hear some more burdens that we're under right now in my diatribe on fair use in the DMCA. Let's take a look. So our next question comes in from UK Airscape, and he was wondering why the fair use provisions don't apply to video game footage, or appear not to. And this question was asked in regards to something I brought up on the wrap-up last week, because I had the retro USB AVS console in for that review. I was posting some game footage on my secondary channel. One of the games that I posted was one of my favorite Nintendo games, Contra, on the NES, and Konami, in about 5 minutes after that video was uploaded, put a copyright claim on it. They didn't take the video video down, but they are denying my ability to monetize that video. In the grand scheme of things, it's not going to be a lot of money because it's only going to get a couple hundred views probably, but this is the kind of stuff that a lot of game reviewers are dealing with on a regular basis, with Konami and Nintendo in particular, the most draconian in their attack of independent content creators here on the YouTube platform. And this is partly why I don't cover Nintendo products all that often, because they are so brutally awful to independent creators doing this kind of behavior. But what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about fair use, but a lot about the copyright laws and the terms of service that YouTube is operating under and the things that I have to abide by as an independent creator. I think you might find this interesting because a lot of people have talked about fair use on the internet before, but not a lot of people have talked about the laws behind it. So in a nutshell, fair use should allow anyone to do a product review of a video game and be able to use that footage without the permission of the content holder. And there's a lot of legal ladders you have to climb to be able to make the case that your use of that content is fair use. But in many cases, I think a lot of people are being very unfairly targeted by some of these algorithms that look for copyrighted content. And unfortunately, a lot of independent creators don't have the means or the knowledge of how to appeal those things. But I want to talk about the law here, at least as I understand it. I'm not a lawyer, but I wanted to give you a quick breakdown here. So back in 1996, when I was still in college 20 years ago, the United States Congress here in the U.S. passed the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, the DMCA, and it's a groundbreaking piece of legislation that really formed the foundation for how media works in this century. This has been the law of the land for 20 years. This is what everyone operates under, and it put the burden of proof, in my opinion. Somebody may disagree with this because this is a very controversial law, as everything is these days. It puts the burden, I think, more so on the rights holders than the creators. And let me show you what I mean by that. So the DMCA created something called safe harbor. So YouTube is a platform. They don't control directly what I upload. So when I upload this video tonight, nobody at YouTube is moderating this and deciding whether or not it's suitable for their platform or not. It just goes up, and if there's a problem, they take it down later, usually. And because they're operating under that model of non-editorializing the content, then they have essentially a safe harbor against lawsuits for copyright. There are some exceptions to that, which is what will lead to my next point, but generally they're under safe harbor, which means that if a rights holder decides that something on their platform shouldn't be there because it's their property, they can file a takedown notice to the platform, and then they will remove the content. But the content creator, me, has an ability to appeal that through a counterclaim on the DMCA. And when I do that, the actual platform has to put the content back up. So if I file a counterclaim, the platform needs to reinstate the content within 14 days of receipt of that counter notice, unless I'm already being sued. So if I file the counter notice and then, let's say Disney comes after me or Konami comes after me for the content again, if they file a lawsuit within that 2-week period of time, then the content will stay down. But if there's no lawsuit filed, the platform is obligated to put that content back up. It takes a lawsuit to get it pulled down again, generally, and that you may wonder why it doesn't happen on YouTube, and I'll get to that, but that's how it's supposed to work. So again, the remedy here is the lawsuit. If they don't file the lawsuit, the content doesn't get pulled down. If they do, it will be pulled down until the lawsuit is resolved. But there's consequences for abuse of this. So as a rights holder, if they, for example, if Konami comes after me and is abusive because maybe they've got some beef against me or something, they could be held liable for civil damages. I could sue them for lost revenue. I could sue them for all the other stuff that maybe pain and suffering or something. But they can also be guilty of perjury if they lied about the thing that they're putting up on the DMCA complaint. So this is a very formal document. It's a legal document where you're essentially making an oath that you're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And the same can be said, though, for the counterclaim. So if I have a claim against me and I counterclaim, I'm under those same consequences as well. So I could be responsible civilly as well as criminally for lying if I was filling out this form when I wasn't really the content owner. So there is some real consequences here, both for abusing the system and for people who violate copyright. And that doesn't really exist on the YouTube platform. So let's see what they did. So YouTube created a system called Content ID, and this is really putting the burden more on the content creator. And Content ID is an automated system that looks for violations and then gives the content owner some choices as to how they want to go about doing that. And I'll get into all the specifics of that in a second. But the reason why Content ID was created was because YouTube was being sued. A lot of these rights holders were challenging the DMCA law to say, look, it's just not reasonable for us to file lawsuits against every single person that's uploading all this content to YouTube. YouTube should bear some responsibility in trying to control their content. So the compromise that YouTube came up with was to say, all right, look, we'll add some things to our terms of service and create this system so that when people upload content, if we find violations of your work, we'll develop a way in which you can more effectively and efficiently get that content pulled down or something else along those lines. And so what they did is they created something that operates outside the DMCA. So a lot of the legal protections that I have under the DMCA, I don't have on the YouTube platform. And the reason is that I agreed to YouTube's terms of service. So in exchange for free hosting and the revenue sharing and all the great benefits that come with a YouTube subscription, or at least a YouTube user account, I also have to agree to abide by their rules. And one of their rules is that we're going to operate our own copyright system that doesn't give you all the same legal protections you might currently have under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. So if I owned a website where I was posting this stuff to, the DMCA would be in more effect, but here on YouTube, it is not. And there's some real benefits to me for being on YouTube, because if I have my own website, I think only maybe 20 of you would actually visit it, maybe a little bit more, but only about a small handful of the 100,000 subscribers that I have would actually watch any of my content on a regular basis, because it's just not where they're going. So part of me being on the platform is I've got to agree to this. So it resides, again, out within terms of service and outside the DMCA, and I agree to abide by those terms of service. Now, rights holders can, though, if they find some content that they wish to claim ownership of, they do have more options here. So in the DMCA scenario, really your only option is to pull the content down. That's it. If the complaint comes in, the remedy is to pull the content down and leave it down. Content ID and YouTube's terms of service allow for some additional options. So one of those is that the rights holder can say, okay, that content can stay up, but we're going to take all their revenue. Or they could decide to pull the content down under Content ID if they wish, or they could allow it to remain up and just not allow it to be monetized. So right now, what's happening with my Konami video is that Konami has denied me monetization rights, but they haven't denied me the ability to put the content up. And this, in some ways, protects freedom of speech for people on YouTube, because although you can't make money on your content, this big bad corporation is not restricting my right to speech. So, you know, it's six of one, half dozen of another. If you are an activist or somebody who really wants to make a point on something and using some copyrighted material to do so, in many cases you won't see that video taken down. You'll just see that you lose the right to make money on it. And for some people, making money is not the primary objectives. But I think in the case of a journalist, we should be allowed to earn money, and these rights holders shouldn't have the ability to decide who makes money and who doesn't. And that's my biggest problem with the Content ID system right now. But this is kind of how this whole thing works. Now, there is an appeal process, and I can go through the Content ID system and make an appeal. However, unlike the DMCA, where the content gets automatically put back up after 14 days, the Content ID system means that that content could be down or unmonetized for 30 days. And if the rights holder doesn't respond to my appeal within that 30-day period of time, then my rights are restored. But if you think about something timely like a news item, a rights holder could basically kill your ability to make any money on your content while it's still relevant. And I'll give you a great example of this. I do a lot of coverage of the space program off and on here on the channel and through some other stuff that I do. And NASA gives away all of their video footage for free to news agencies, and anyone really. It's all public domain footage. But what happens is news agencies grab this footage, use it in their own newscasts. They upload those video samples into the Content ID system. It automatically gets flagged when I upload that same image because it is public domain. And then if Fox News, for example, and this really did happen with Fox News, if they decide that, or nobody's keeping an eye on their Content ID appeals, they could just sit on it for 30 days, kill any kind of relevance that I have, and I lose 30 days of revenue in the process. And in the past, you never got that revenue back. It was only recently that YouTube changed its policies to create kind of an escrow where those monies are earned, and whoever wins the appeal essentially gets the money at the end of the process. So that is a nice improvement, because it does at least give you the ability, knowing that if you've got public domain footage and you shouldn't be held liable for it, at least you'll get your money back at the end of the day. Before, that wasn't the case. And this was only a very recent change to that. So there are 30 days there. Now, YouTube can decide that my content is legitimate, and they could reinstate it. And at that point, the rights holder can file the DMCA request. But I found is that, in my own experience, that when it's questionable as to whether or not fair use is at work here or not, YouTube often just decides not to get in the middle of it and just let it sit there. So if that happens and they don't reinstate the content, you're kind of out of luck because they're not working within the DMCA. YouTube has decided that this is not appropriate for their platform based on their terms of service, and you're just done. Now, if for some reason YouTube does reinstate the content, or that rights holder goes to 30 days without responding and the content goes up, they can still file a DMCA complaint, and then you're going into that complaint, counterclaim, lawsuit thing if that is where they want to go with it. So it really is a pretty crazy process here. But Content ID, again, I think really puts the burden, sometimes unfairly, on the independent creator to prove that they actually have the right to use this content. And it's really becoming kind of a chilling effect in the sense that I'm not producing content on certain companies because I know they are very draconian in their approach to this stuff, and I don't want to be bothered wasting my time and effort on reviewing something from Nintendo as a result. So I don't cover a lot of Nintendo because of that, and that kind of stinks. But that's just the way these things work these days. Now, consequences here. So in the DMCA instance, if somebody was doing something unfairly to me, I have some legal action I could take. They could be convicted of perjury, for example, and face some criminal charges as well. Not the same here on Content ID. There's been really zero evidence that I could find that YouTube has ever actively pursued terms of service violations against frequent abusers of the Content ID system. Again, those same legal penalties just don't exist under YouTube's terms of service as they do here. Now, I suppose a bunch of creators could get together and decide to sue as a big class action at some point, but we'd all have to be able to prove that we've lost a significant amount of money to justify that lawsuit. So it's really going to take, I think, a strength in numbers kind of thing where enough people who've been, fall under this horrible system to stand up together and file some huge class action, probably against those who are filing these takedown requests. The problem is that even the large YouTubers, I don't think there's enough money there to really warrant a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. And here's my biggest problem with all of this is that there are a lot of well-meaning creators out there who've produced some really great content, who get these copyright flags and never do anything about it and just give their money away, essentially. And I am sure there are millions of dollars unlawfully, in my opinion, flowing from these creators' accounts over to these rights holders because of this automated Content ID system that just flags stuff randomly, irrespective of whether or not the person has fair use to use the content. So it's a big problem, but at the same time, for me at least, there's a greater benefit to being on the YouTube platform than there isn't being on the YouTube platform, as I mentioned earlier. So I could not do this without YouTube, and this is one of those costs of doing business that you just have to accept, that there's going to be, every time you upload something, the chance that your content is going to get flagged. And YouTube's been trying to find ways to help creators. One of the biggest problems that I used to have was with some of the royalty-free music that I bought and had licenses to. Those were getting claimed all the time. So I started using YouTube's library when I do use music, and that has certainly helped out quite a bit. But it is a pretty crazy system, but that is really, in a nutshell, what we're dealing with here. And this is why it often seems unfair to the creator, because YouTube has slipped something in that really puts the burden back on the creator more so than the person that actually owns the copyright. And this is the struggle. And they did this because, again, they were getting sued, and they had to come up with some remedy to prevent their legal burden from being too heavy, because as they were getting sued, they were first getting started, and they were trying to get their feet wet into this new medium. And I think they just wanted to find some way to just get these record companies off their back. And unfortunately, a lot of folks are abusing it or using it improperly. And again, it's a darn shame that Nintendo, Konami, and many other companies are using this gameplay footage thing as a means of choosing who makes money and who doesn't, and it sucks. So that is my professional opinion on that. All right, so there you have it. Thanks for sticking around. It's a lot of stuff to take in, but I think it's important just to see the big picture context of this and how the burdens are very different between how YouTube conducts its policies versus what the law allows outside of YouTube. And I can see why they did what they did. And this is a complaint about how things work, but at the same time, I could not do what I do if I wasn't on YouTube. So I think there's certain things that you have to understand when you are a small creator on this platform that sometimes some groups of people can ruin it for the rest of us. So the people that were uploading all this content without the right to use it have made what we have today exist, and that is part of what we're dealing with here. And I just really would like to see the process get better, both in how these takedowns occur, maybe a better due process within YouTube's terms of service for contesting a fair use claim, and giving us creators the right to defend our content as efficiently as those who come after ours can do. And I think all those things would be nice improvements to see on the platform. Again, as I mentioned in the original video, I could not do what I do without YouTube as a platform. So I accept the fact that there's going to be some additional burdens placed on me to do work on the platform, but I think it could be better, and that is why I wanted to share this with you. More reviews coming soon. They will be back to normal. I just wanted to get this in, make sure other people could see it and comment on it too. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. And this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching. This channel is brought to you by my Patreon supporters. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/Patreon to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/S.